The city that never sleeps was my beat that night. The streets of New York, alive with an energy that seemed to pulse in rhythm with the neon lights. It was a late shift, and I found myself weaving through the concrete canyons, the thrum of this city my constant companion. As I patrolled the dimly lit alleys and bustling avenues, the radio crackled to life with the chatter about routine calls and minor disturbances. But then came through a transmission for a place I hope to never visit whilst out at night. Attention all units, a possible break-in reported at the old Lowe's Theatre on 46th Street. Proceed with caution. The Lowe's Theatre on 46th Street was a relic, a derelict structure long abandoned by time and progress. It was a dark looming presence amidst the gleaming skyscrapers, its windows shattered and its history cloaked in mystery. No one had dared enter that forsaken place in years. With a quick glance at my partner, I shifted into drive, and the squad car's tyres squealed as we raced to the scene. Suspense hung heavy in the air, our hearts racing, not only from the speed of our journey but also from the sense of the intrigue that clung to the call. The building appeared like a haunted sentinel, its shattered windows glowing with an eerie amber hue from the streetlights. We approached with caution, flashlights in hand, our boots echoing on the cracked sidewalk. The metal door cracked open, granting us access to the gloomy interior. Our flashlights cut through the darkness, revealing a cavernous, forgotten world. Dust and cobwebs hung like shrouds, a testament to the decades of the abandonment. The air was heavy with the scent of decay, and our curiosity propelled us further inside. As we ventured deeper into the heart of the building, an unsettling feeling of being watched enveloped us. The suspense tightened its grip, and I motioned to my partner to silence our steps. We exchanged nervous glances, a silent conversation of unease. Around a corner we heard it, a soft, eerie chanting, a sound that sent shivers down our spines. The voices seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere, resonating through the dark corridors like an incantation. It was as if the very walls of the building were alive with dark secrets. The source of the chanting was a room at the end of a dim corridor. We burst into the room expecting to find the source of the chanting, but there was nobody there, just a few candles flickering in the darkness. But the eerie chanting continued, its origin unfathomable. The room was void of life, and the air was thick with what felt like an otherworldly presence. A sense of dread quickly overcame us as we strained our senses to grasp the inexplicable. The door slammed shut, and the candles extinguished, along with our flashlights. Now trapped in a pitch-black room, our hearts pounded with fear and confusion as the eerie, incomprehensible chanting filled the air. We bashed at our flashlights, hoping for some light, but they remained stubbornly unresponsive, leaving us in a darkness that seemed to defy the natural order of things. As the oppressive dread tightened its grip on us, we attempted to pry the door open, but it was as if it had become a part of the wall itself, immovable and unyielding. Panic threatened to consume us, and we were there left with the haunting realization that we were caught in the grip of something unlike anything we could fathom, a force beyond our understanding. The room seemed to pulsate with a malevolent energy, and the chanting, now louder and more insistent, reverberated through the room. Desperation overtook, and I'm not ashamed to admit that we reached out to one another, clinging to the thin thread of our own sanity. We decided to do the only thing we could, stand our ground and confront whatever force held us captive. In the darkness we began to call out, our voices trembling, demanding that whatever was responsible reveal itself. The chanting continued, now echoing with a ghostly resonance that seemed to emanate from all around us. Then, just as hope began to wane, the chanting abruptly ceased. The room was consumed by an eerie silence. We strained our senses, our ears picked for a sign of movement, but there was nothing. The oppressive energy seemed to lift as if the unseen presence had momentarily relented. With renewed determination, we once again attempted to force the door open, and this time it gave way. We stumbled into the corridor, our flashlights flickering back to life as if released from some kind of spell. The room, now empty of a supernatural presence, appeared just as it had when we first entered. We sprinted back to the exit of the theatre, the sense of being watched dissipating with each step as we burst out into the open air of the New York night. Our hearts still raced, and our minds were awash with the inexplicable events that had transpired within those cursed walls. Neither one of us were the same after that night, and we haven't really spoken of it since. But not a day goes by that I don't relive that night, the chant still ever present in my mind like an earworm you just can't get out of your head. It was just another night on the job, cruising along the quiet, desolate highway in the middle of nowhere. My squad car cut through the inky darkness, and the usual radio chatter filled the cabin. Routine calls, minor disturbances, you know the usual. The night had a way of turning every rustle and creak into a symphony of eerie sounds, but it was all part of the job. And then it happened. Out of the void, I spotted the faint glimmer of tail lights at the side of the road. It was an abandoned truck, its rear end jutting out slightly into the live lane. The sight struck me as odd, but it wasn't out of the ordinary. Plenty of hunters left trucks at the side of the road whilst camping out during the hunting season. However, curiosity and a sense of duty compelled me to pull over. The way the truck was parked was a danger to any other drivers who might come by that night. I pulled up behind the truck, and I got out my squad car, but as I approached, a strange unease washed over me, my hand instinctively reaching for my sidearm. I made my way around to the left side of the vehicle to find no driver present. The truck's hood was cold, it had clearly been there a while. I walked back to the driver's side with the intent to open up the vehicle to roll it closer to the verge. But as I swung the door open, a figure stirred in the driver's seat. It was as if they materialised out of thin air. "Police," I called out, my voice quivering despite my efforts to sound confident. The figure remained still, hunched over the steering wheel. My heart pounded like a drum in the silence that followed. I cautiously approached the figure, my flashlight fixed on him. The scene that would unfold this night was one I would never forget. The figure was a man, his face a mask of terror, his eyes staring unblinkingly ahead. His hands gripped the wheel in a white-knuckled death grip. "Sir, are you okay?" I ventured my words hesitant as I rapped my knuckles on the window. No response. It was as though the man had been frozen in time. I radioed for backup, my voice strained and my attention never wavering from the unresponsive figure. My pulse quickened as I contemplated the implications of the scene. What had caused this man to be seemingly shattered by fear? Backup finally arrived, the man having still not muttered a word. "Sir, are you okay?" I asked again, not expecting a response, as I rapped my knuckles on the window once again, hoping to bring him back from whatever abyss he had fallen into. His lips moving as though his voice had been stolen by the horror that lurked in the depths of his mind. "I saw them," he muttered, his voice barely audible. "I saw them, the things in the woods. They watched, always watching, from the shadows." I exchanged a glance with my fellow officers, a shared unease settling upon us. The man continued, his words spilling out in a stream of incoherent babble and disjointed fragments. Their eyes, glowing eyes in the darkness. They whispered things no one should hear. I couldn't escape, couldn't get away from the eyes. His voice grew more frantic, his eyes wild as he relived whatever horrors he had witnessed. I tried to drive away, but they were always there, in the trees, on the road, the eyes, the whispers. I couldn't escape. The man's words were chilling, and a sense of profound dread hung over us. We called for medical assistance, and once the paramedics had come and took the traumatised man into their care, my fellow officers and I were left standing by the abandoned car. The night was eerily quiet, and the chilling accounts of the man's ordeal still hung heavy in the air. With a shared sense of unease, we decided to survey the area for any signs of the things he had described, the glowing eyes, and the haunting whispers in the darkness. Our flashlights cut through the night, and we ventured into the shadows that enveloped the surrounding woods. The trees rustled in the wind, and the darkness seemed to take on a life of its own, moving and shifting as if concealing unseen watchers. Every branch that cracked and every rustle in the underbrush sent shivers down our spines. We scanned the tree line, hoping to catch a glimpse of what had driven the man to the brink of madness. As we moved deeper into the woods, a strange sensation washed over us, a feeling of being watched by unseen eyes fixed upon us from the shadows. The chilling reality of the man's account became all too palpable, and our every nerve was on edge. But despite our best efforts, we found no evidence of the things he had mentioned. No glowing eyes, no mysterious figures, and no haunting whispers in the darkness. It was as if the night had swallowed up any trace of the horrors that had haunted the man. With a heavy silence we returned to the abandoned car, our search yielding nothing but an unsettling sense of the unknown. The night held its secrets close, and we were left with a deep sense of unease, the haunting realization that some terrors might be beyond the reach of our understanding. It was just another cold dark night as I patrolled the desolate streets of a small town in Milwaukee. The eerie silence was only broken by the distant hum of a lone street lamp, casting long shadows across the cracked pavements. It was the kind of night that dragged on with nothing much happening, the kind that made you question why you ever chose to be a police officer. All of a sudden my radio cracked to life, breaking the oppressive silence. Dispatch reported a disturbance at the abandoned Sanctuary Woods Asylum on the outskirts of town. I gripped the steering wheel, and my heart quickened as I navigated my squad car through the winding roads leading to this forsaken place. It was an address I dreaded, and I knew my presence there would be no ordinary patrol. The call I received from dispatch was vague, offering little information about the nature of the disturbance. The lack of the specific details left my imagination to run wild. It could be anything from trespassers and vandals, to something more sinister such as squatters or potentially a dangerous individual. The uncertainty of the call only heightened my anxiety, but before I knew it, the asylum loomed before me, its broken windows like the empty eyes of a long-forgotten nightmare. The building had a history of madness and despair, a place that had been abandoned for decades after unspeakable horrors had occurred within its walls. I approached with caution, gripping my flashlight and firearm tightly. The only sound was the wind whispering through the overgrown trees as I stepped into the decaying structure. My footsteps echoed through the darkness like an ominous drum. It felt like walking into the very jaws of hell. The flashlight's beam cut through the thick air, revealing graffiti-scarred walls and the remnants of rusted bed frames. The place was a haven for vandals and squatters alike, and I half expected to encounter some drug-addled soul seeking refuge. I began to venture deeper, my senses on high alert, but suddenly a distant sound sent a chill down my spine. A faint, mournful wail echoed through the corridors, a sound that pierced the silence like a blade. It was a haunting cry unlike anything I'd ever heard before. My hand trembled as I inched towards the source of the sound. Sweat formed on my brow. The beam of my flashlight landed on an open cell door and my heart leaped into my throat. Inside, a figure, shrouded in tattered rags, was huddled in the corner. The stench of decay hung heavy in the air. I called out, "Police, are you okay?" My voice quivered, and the figure remained still. As I approached cautiously, the figure turned to reveal hollow, lifeless eyes and a twisted skeletal face. It let out another wail, a guttural sound that sent a shockwave of terror through me. I stumbled back, fumbling for my radio to call for backup, but as I glanced back to the cell, the figure was gone, leaving behind only a lingering dread, the chilling echo of its wail still haunting my ears. Panic set in as I fled the asylum, my heart pounding, convinced that something malevolent had crossed paths with me that night. I radioed for backup, and officers soon arrived to search the building, but they found nothing. No trace of the figure, no evidence of life. The asylum remained a place of dark secrets, its haunting history unresolved. That night I left that forsaken asylum, but the encounter would forever haunt my dreams. The chilling wail, the spectral figure, a memory I could never escape, a reminder that some mysteries are best left undiscovered.